You are now tuned in to the Triple Threat Podcast.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Triple Threat Podcast. My name is Ken Triplett, along with my partner in crime, Jordan Triplett, and we're here to talk about the NBA, specifically our favorite team, the Philadelphia 76ers, who are off to a fast start to the 2019-2020 NBA season at 3-0. Jordan, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, feeling good about this undefeated team, first in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, defensively, I saw a stat earlier today about the Sixers, and they lead the league by far defensively regarding three-point attempts. They're only giving up 22.6 three-point attempts to their opponents. I know it's a small sample size. I know it's only 3 games, but it's just a harbinger of what everyone thought would happen with this team. How long they are, how imposing they are, how much of a perimeter defensive threat they're going to be with teams, not only in the interior, but now obviously, as everyone thought it would extend to the exterior with Richardson, the length of Richardson, the length of Ben Simmons, the rookie Matisse Thybulle, and other players, Ennis, who plays well on the perimeter defensively, only giving up 22.6 three-point attempts per game to the 3 teams that they played so far. And I think it's just, a marker of things to come for this defense and how this team is going to really put their stamp on the NBA.
It's not just the length. It's also a combination of the depth that we do have now. Brett Brown's he's not really going too deep into the rotation right now. But he is maintaining a strong defensive presence and having just the rotations flow well. We have like last game against the Hawks, he had Trae Young being guarded by Thybulle a lot of possessions. He had him being guarded by Richardson for the most part. Switch him on to Ben Simmons at the end of the game. We're constantly throwing high-level defenders at other teams' best players, and it's slowing them down a lot, and you can really see the effects.
Absolutely, and Simmons was brilliant against the Atlanta player. I'm sorry. I'm drawing
Trae Young.
Trae Young, I'm sorry. He really did a number on Trae Young at the end of the game. You can see Young's frustration with trying to get his shot off against someone who's basically 8 to 9 inches taller than him. And that bothered him. He couldn't really get around him. So Simmons did a fantastic job at the end of that game. Defensively, the team clamped down. They gave up 62 first half points. But only 41 second half points.
38.
So they really just 38. So they really just got it together defensively. I really wish they weren't as lackadaisical on the defensive end in the second half, that they would put together a more consistent 48-minute game defensively. And if they do that, they're going to end up beating teams easily, especially younger teams and inferior teams that don't have any business being within, 10 points of this team throughout the course of an NBA game. So I think if they begin to clean that up in the first half, they wouldn't have to put themselves in that position in the second half to clamp teams down defensively and win games or win close games like they had to do in Atlanta. But speaking of that 3-0 start, it makes people think about the possibility or if it's even realistic for this team to think about getting 60 wins this year. What do you think?
I think it's definitely possible, but it's starting to look shaky. I don't want to overreact too much to Joel Embiid's health right now because that is the biggest thing to getting to 60 wins. The plan for him was to have him play as many games as possible, but to just cut the minutes down to about 30 a game, maybe 31 or so. But if he's missing whole games, that puts a lot more stress on Al Horford, who may need a little bit of load management himself when it comes down to the end of the year and keeping him fresh. And then Kylo Quinn as well. And the fact that Brown is not going too deep into the rotation, often having like a 9-man or even 8-man rotation, It's really limiting this team in terms of hitting that 60 wins. I feel like we need to get far more production and just general minutes for our bench overall so we can spread out that effort there and make sure we do have the endurance to get to that 60 win mark.
Who would you like to see off the bench? Who would you like to see coming into that gap to fill those extra minutes?
Yeah, obviously, I would like to see more of two guys we literally did not see last game, Trey Burke and Haru Neto. Both of them, they need more minutes to spread this court because clearly this three ball has not been falling for this team at all. And to keep two of our better shooters on the team sat on the bench, I don't understand how you can't find minutes for those two guys when we're playing against a smaller team like Atlanta, who's not a big, imposing team, or even Detroit, who's very guard heavy. We had very few minutes of those two guys on the court for that game. And the league, you don't get too much smaller or too guard focused more than a team like the Pistons, because when you look at the top end teams, teams like the Lakers and the Clippers, they have their couple guards that do their work, but most of their star power comes from the wings and the bigs there. So we need to be able to find minutes for those guys that won't be maybe too playable in the playoffs when we do get to a team like the Milwaukee Bucks. But to get minutes out of those guys for this regular season and get that 60 wins, they definitely need to see the court.
Well, if Furkan Korkmaz is going to continue to play the way he's playing, not to say that he's playing horrible, but I just don't see it. Brett Brown is hoping to get some three-point play production out of him because he is a shooter, or at least when he's open, he's supposed to be able to hit shots. But he can't create his own shot. He's not a catch-and-shoot release guy, he's not a shoot-off-the-dribble guy, like J.J. Redick was. And J.J. Redick is the best I've ever seen do it, in terms of the quickness and the timing and basically, coming off a one or two dribble, pulling up and knocking down three-pointers. He's not that guy. He's not even close to it. So he's a guy that needs to kind of camp out around the three-point line, catch wide open passes, I should say, and hit the open shot. The problem is the Sixers right now haven't gotten to a place whereby they can kick it out to open wings because, Ben Simmons isn't a penetrator in the half-court set, not with the frequency that a smaller player or a quicker player, like Nato or Burke can do. So I agree with you. I like to see them get more opportunities to get some more minutes, take away the minutes that Furkan is getting, at the very least, and see what these two guys can do in terms of dribble penetration and kicking out to open wings and increasing their three-point shooting efficiency. So that's definitely something I'd like to see happen. And it could happen this upcoming week. The Sixers have, after tonight's game, as we're taping the show, they play the Minnesota Timberwolves at home. But after that, they have a West Coast road trip coming up. So they play Portland, Phoenix, Utah, and Denver. All four tough games, including that Phoenix game, because Phoenix is playing really well early in the season so far, even without the Ayton, who's suspended. They're very competitive. They got a very young team. They seem to be playing very hungry. Their coaching staff has them playing really hard, so that's not a game that they can take for granted, not like anyone in the NBA has in the past. So I think you may see Brett Brown add more depth to his people coming off the bench because of this upcoming road trip, because they're going to need the bodies, quite frankly.
Yeah, and especially with Shake Milton going down, I really think there's some sort of quiet competition between Milton and Korkmaz right now for getting those minutes. I think that's why Korkmaz and Milton are getting those early minutes right now. But I think Milton has won that battle so far before his injury. And I can't wait for him to come back. He looks much quicker on defense in terms of lateral quickness and keeping up with his defender. And I think he shot the ball better. He's definitely had more confidence than Furkan. Furkan has a lot of plays where he may not seem too confident in that catch and shoot shot, and he does try to dribble, and then something bad ends up happening like a turnover. But Milton, he's shown that he can finish at the rim far better than Furkan. He's shown he can put the ball on the floor far better. So even after a disappointing summer league for him, I think he's definitely deserving of all the minutes that Furkan has got so far. But to that same extent, back to Burke and Neto, I don't see either of them playing far worse defense than Korkmaz has thus far. I'd rather have one of them out there and they have to go guard Trae Young for a possession, or they have to guard another Atlanta guard while Richardson slides down a position or something like that, or they can even guard Herter far better than Korkmaz could. I just don't see why Furkan is still getting minutes with this team. I'm trying to figure out what dirt he has on Brett Brown to keep getting these minutes.
I can't figure it out either. It's a head scratcher, that's for sure. But it continues, at least at this point, as Brett Brown tries to make Furkan a player. And, I wish he were right. I just don't see it. So, but we'll see how that shakes out. Speaking of Shake Milton, glad you brought him up. He has really been, at least, and it's unfortunate that he got hurt in the Atlanta game because he really had a solid outing. Hit some threes for this team and played good defense. So, but the good news is that the injury is not as bad as feared. He could be back in about 5 or 6 games. So that's good news for him. Just a hyperextension on that knee. And speaking of health overall, Joel and his health right now, they did a load management game, which the Sixers did win. But what are your thoughts on Joel's overall health right now?
I think we're seeing more of the same from last year. And it's so tough seeing every other game he's on the injury report. And I'm just like, already? Like, we just started the season. Why does he have already an ankle sprain here? Why is he already a game time decision for the third game? Why is he still trying to play and fight through injury in the Atlanta game so early? Did we not learn any lesson from last year or the year before or the year before that? How many times do we have to have Joel just get hurt like this? I'd rather them err on the side of caution now that we do have Horford, who's easily the best backup center right now in the league, though he does start at power forward. His role is largely being our backup center. He's easily the best at that in the league. And Kyle O'Quinn, he's better than any other backup that Joel has ever had his entire career. And with those two guys, why not roll the dice and just play a few games against a team like the Suns or the Hornets, those games against like the Cavaliers? Sit Joel. It's not worth it. The Hawks are looking good right now. We do need every win we can get to 60 wins, and I'm glad Joel played. But if this win against Atlanta means we can't win in May and June, then what's the point?
Well, I think what you're seeing with the injury report has a bit to do with the NBA rule changes and coaches not being able to just rest players just for the sake of rest. Honestly, I don't think Joel had any issues with his ankle. I think Brett Brown was just being coy with the injury report and used it as an excuse to rest Joel for a game. So I think that a little bit that is what's happening. You can tell by the way he played in the Atlanta game. There was no residue, or there was no indication that Joel was harboring any kind of soreness from a bad ankle in that game, the way he played. And, when Joel was out and the next game that he comes back, it's just a reminder to Sixers fans of how much they need this guy. It's a totally different team without Joel than with Joel in the lineup and in the game, because he carries everything offensively and defensively as a rim protector for this team. So if they're going to get to 60 wins, I do think they're going to have to rest him. Maybe, I won't say 20 games, but at least 10 games, 10 to 12 games this season where they do rest him, because they do have the luxury of Horford and Kyle O'Quinn to back this team up and do just fine, or at least squeaking out wins with Joel out of the lineup. So, but we'll see. We'll see how things turn out for the Sixers and their march to hopefully 60 wins and a 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. But having said that, they're going to need improved play from Ben Simmons. Ben has been Ben.
Yeah.
He's not shooting yet. I like to see him, just just take a three. Take an open three. Don't worry about missing. Don't worry about your percentage. You know, a successful 3-point shooter makes only 4 out of 10. And that's a successful shooter. It's like baseball and hitting averages. You know, you're successful 30% of the time. That's what's considered being a success. If he only makes 25% of his threes, I'm happy as you know what. You know, I don't care about his shooting percentage. 1 out of 4, 2 out of 8, 25%, go for it.
That's what we're already getting out of the rest of our guys right now. So why not just throw it up there? Al Horford, he's shooting like 25, 30% from three this year. Tobias, he was like 1 for 9 on three this last game, or 2 for 9 or something like that. So why not just take the three?
Which has been really surprising. Than Tobias Harris's shooting woes, because he came to Philadelphia with a reputation of being a shooter. And I really don't know what's happened to his shot, especially from deep. And it's really concerning to myself, I'm sure to the Sixers as well, that he clearly does not have either the confidence or he's lost some height on his elevation, but he's really got to figure it out. It could be the added load on offense that's kind of taken away his ability to hit those threes consistently. But man, 1 for 9 is just not going to cut it.
Yeah, he looks like he's running out there like a role player, it feels like sometimes. Like, it's not befitting of a $180 million man to be as passive as he's been outside of that game against Detroit. He really carried us there. He was obviously hot, going 10 for 15 from the field overall for 29. But otherwise, it feels like he doesn't think this is his team. Like, he's still playing for a spot on this team to make sure he's still on the court or something. He won't be as aggressive as you'd like to see from the guy that we expected to be our best perimeter scorer this year. And it's just all that offense needs. It's just more spacing. And if he's not providing it, where does it come from? And same with Ben Simmons not shooting right now. Giannis went 25% from three and he just won MVP. Give me 25%, Ben. Stop catching balls at the top of the key at that 3-point line and immediately begin running when you catch it. Like, just stop, hold off, take the shot. They're probably going to give it to you, but he catches a lot of passes outside the arc already in motion to the basket. We all know where you're going, Ben. Just please try, take the shot. And we also heard at the beginning of the year, he won't be sitting in the dunker spot. He'll be in the corner ready for a three. I haven't seen that once. I've seen Ben Simmons in this dunker spot a good 50% of the time on a lot of the plays that this team does run. And I'm just sick of it. When are we going to see some progression? We can't have the same old Ben Simmons. Same old Ben Simmons. Yeah, he's an all-star, but same old Ben Simmons is not a champion just yet.
I agree with you 100%. We would like to see some change. We thought we were going to see it. Maybe that 3-pointer he hit in preseason was just a tease, just to shut people up momentarily. But I agree with you. He's got to really expand his game in order for this team to make that next leap and make that next step. Speaking of next steps, let's transition over to the NCAA. The NCAA has, made their ruling, really just based off of pressure from the California state law ruling of players finally being able to make money off their own likeness, their own name, their own profile, if you will. So it's a big step that the NCAA has committed to. But a lot of critics right now, Jordan, I am one of them, don't feel that their decision has gone far enough for college athletes.
Yeah, definitely. It's absolutely a step in the right direction. Obviously, forced their hand by California passing that law. But it is a step in the right direction in terms of a lot of where this revenue does come from. It does come from the name of the players and their likenesses. And obviously, a big discussion in that is video games, because that's where this whole lawsuit started with Ed O'Bannon. So those guys will get paid to be in those games. But obviously, it'll be definitely skewed again towards those bigger universities. And that's a sort of problem that the NCAA said that would happen if we do start having those players get paid. But what does that change, honestly? Like, are the top schools still not getting the top recruits? There's no sort of power balance that changes. Obviously, you go to the bigger schools for more exposure. Now you're going to the bigger schools for more exposure that leads to money now, which is how it's always been. It's just you're getting the money sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's funny to me how the NCAA wants to talk about fairness and, what about the little guy or what about the Division II or Division III guy? Listen, this, like you said, nothing's going to change. You have the talent, you go to the top schools, you get rewarded for it. This is a capitalistic society, and if you're a top guy, if you're in college and you're Baker Mayfield, and you're able to capitalize off the fact that you're famous, that you're a Heisman Trophy candidate, if you're Tua Tagovailoa, and you get rewarded for what you've put in, and it'll trickle down according to the level that a player is at. So if a local player who's a big deal at a Division II or Division III school, if he can do a signing at an auto dealership because it's the only school in town, and he can make a couple $100 that he wouldn't make normally somewhere, then great. That's what the rules should be designed for. And if a player at a Power 5 conference can make a few thousand or $10,000 for a commercial, not a commercial, but like an appearance or his name on a video game, wherever the case may be, that's the way it works. But I doubt that the NCAA is going to go that far. You have a statement from them. Can you read that statement? It's a very key statement at the very end that kind of gives you a clue in terms of what direction they're going to go in with this.
Yeah, this comes directly from NCAA President Mark Emmert. He said in regards to that decision they reached, figuring out all the details of it, it's going to be a challenge. It's a much more complex issue than most people see it as. I think schools are going to be able to work through this process and come up with rules that make great sense for the student athletes and allow universities to continue their collegiate model of athletics.
And there you have it, folks. That last statement, that last comment, the collegiate model of athletics. And what that basically means to me is that we want to keep the control. We're going to model this thing after what we've been doing for the last 100 years or 50 years. When he first coined the term student athlete, or 60 years ago. And they are going to say, we're going to do it our way. We're going to have tight controls on this thing, but it's going to fall in line with our collegiate model, whatever that means. But I think I know what that means. So,
yeah, it means we want to keep the money in our hands. That's what it means.
Absolutely. They want to keep that relationship going, that tight iron fist, if you will, of making sure the dollars may go to some of the students in one aspect, but they're going to get their cut. Let's put it that way, in some way or shape or form. So that leads us to our dummy of the week, Jordan. Both you and I agree. People have taken this decision and are on one side of it or the other. And we have our dummy of the week being Senator Richard Burr from North Carolina, who wants to tax a scholarship of people or athletes who want to cash in on their likeness. First of all, a scholarship is not income. It pays for something that they get in return for services that they render to, in this case, a school or university. It's not income. You can't tax this. What the hell is he doing?
I don't know what he's thinking saying this. He said if college athletes are going to make money off their likenesses while in school, their scholarships should be treated like income. I'll be introducing legislation that subjects scholarships given to athletes who choose to cash in to income taxes. And again, they are going to school. You can't tax money that is just going right back from whatever institution, whether that be a government scholarship or the school scholarship itself. It's paying for those classes, for room and board, for all that stuff. You're going to tax that, and then now student athletes in North Carolina will have to just get a little less on their scholarship. So all those guys, they don't want to go there because they might even have to pay. Their scholarship might not cover all their expenses in college like it doesn't already. Student athletes, they're already consistently having stories of starvation because they're constantly going from practice. They're doing a lot of travel. They're trying to keep up with their classes. Sometimes they have to skip a meal. Sometimes, well, obviously they can't make money right now, so they can't just get a job and make a lot of money to pay for a lot of things that they want because they're still people. They're still just normal human beings. And I don't know why you would say this, especially if you think it's going to get you reelected, which is coming up for you. And are you also going to tax scholarships for the academic scholarships there at those schools?
Exactly.
For a bunch of kids who work hard day in and day out from day one in high school, and then they finally get a full ride to their college, and now they're being taxed because you don't want college athletes who are 60% African American in football right now, at least. The numbers might be even a greater disparity in basketball. But just because those guys and those demographics are getting money, now you have an issue with those scholarships.
All good points, Jordan. And, I just want to say a couple things added to that. Number one, I think there's a clear racial overtone to his reaction and his law because he only wants to pinpoint athletes. He's not going to, make this applicable to, like you said, academic scholarships. He didn't mention anything about that. If a guy who's on an academic scholarship or let's say he's on a music scholarship and he gets a job in a band or in a philharmonic while he's in school and he gets paid, no one says a word about that. It's the same premise as someone, playing football or basketball who gets paid for their likeness. So he's not going after that. He's going after athletes who are, on college campuses who are minorities, black students. So I think there's a racial overtone to this thing. And secondly, I just think that, if it passes in North Carolina, which I highly doubt it will, but if it does, think about the ramifications of recruiting for Duke, North Carolina, NC State, of players who say, you know what, you guys have this law that says I'm going to get taxed by my scholarship if I go there. I think I'm going to go somewhere else, like Kentucky, or whatever the case may be, or Florida State, that don't have this law in the books. So just really asinine reaction, asinine law, and something that I think has racial overtones to it, which is why it came out in the first place. But he's our Dummy of the Week, Senator Richard Burr. Congratulations on your award. We'll be sending it to you shortly. So that wraps up this episode of Triple Threat Podcast. We thank you so much, guys, for listening. We'll be back next week with more. An NCAA preview is coming up as college basketball starts. We'll talk about our North Carolina Tar Heels, who will play the Notre Dame Fighting Irish on November the 8th for their opener of the season. So we're looking forward to that. Guys, thanks a lot. You've been listening to Triple Threat Podcast. Ken Triplett, Jordan Triplett. See you next time.